time keeps dragging on. That train keeps on rolling all around the San Antonio. When I was just a baby, my mama told me, son, always be a good boy, don't ever play with guns. But I shot a man in Reno just to watch him die. And I had that lonesome whistle, blow my blues away.
It feels like to me that craft brewers and the people who enjoy craft brews, they're like proud of what they made. They're like, hey guys, you know, have you had that new Surly or that new Summit or whatever, or that new Tall Grass? And I feel like that's something that's really kind of a miss in today, like in America, kind of.
Beer brings people together. Like, I think it's just like, it takes a while to drink one, right? So like, you're forced to have a conversation with someone, and sometimes that person can be your best friend, and sometimes that person can be like a random person at a bar. And I think it depends on the beer. I think craft beers like bring a different crowd together. You don't have to be hammered to just enjoy a beer and talk with someone. And I think it's just like, whatever it takes to drink that beer, that 15 minutes, 20 minutes, it forces you to have a face-to-face conversation with someone. That I think is really important.
Budweiser, how long can you talk about Budweiser? You know, with craft beer you can talk about it for days and days and days.
Well, that's a good point.
Like with my dad, we would talk once a month until I turned 21, and then we started talking about craft beer, and we both have like similar tastes, so he texts me every other day and is like, hey, have you tried like the Deschutes or like the whatever? And it's like a whole nother, like, it's just an interesting thing that you can share with someone.
Yeah, that's totally an interesting point. Like, no one asks anyone else, like, dude, have you tried have you tried the new Coors Light? It's like in a new can. You know, there's nothing really that interesting. Like, everybody's been there. There's nothing really to write home about as far as the flavor goes. It's just a fizzy yellow beverage.
Talk about that new flavor, not the new bottle, but talk about like the Vortex bottle. You're talking about like the, like, well, I like that. Like,
How do you feel about those two air vents that they got?
yeah.
Like, tell me, like, you think one's enough, or?
You think you can shotgun it faster by poking it all over the keys?
That's actually really interesting. Like, they change their gimmicks.
Oh yeah.
And craft beer just sticks to like flavor. It like creates allegiance.
Oh yeah, for sure. Because you know, it's not something that anyone outside of Milwaukee will feel about. All those generic. Whatever.
It's sort of like your favorite sports team, right?
Sure.
You're like, I'm a Surly guy, man. Like,
no, Lucid's way better, man.
You like those guys over at Poor Decisions? Fuck you.
I think it kind of speaks to like that desire for self-sufficiency in a way, like all those sorts of things, like that you're proud that syrup came from the trees that you see every day on the way to class. You know what I mean? Like, it's just one more way of connection. Yeah, absolutely, and it's one more way of saying like, hey, I made that, I can enjoy that. You know, like we feel that when we build something. Like somebody builds a house for themselves. They're like, this is my house. I built this house. It's still sort of the same thing when you create your own beer, as opposed to like. I mean, there could feasibly be 3 breweries in America, like Bud, Miller, and Coors. You know what I mean? Like that could be it, and there would be enough beer for everybody. But why do people want to put more effort into it? It's because they have that sense of pride, that creativity and self-sufficiency, and it all plays into a craft beer.
Absolutely. I'm John O'Reilly, and I'm a home brewer. What beer drinking culture is to me now is not what it was when I was in college, and not even kind of shortly after college. But for me, I really enjoy having a good beer at the end of the day, and in particular, I like sitting and sharing stories over beers. Mm-hmm. And so I think, honestly, when I was teaching, that was kind of a way for us to not only decompress, but it just kind of allowed us to. Gave us an excuse to sit down and talk and kind of share the day's events and kind of go over what we would do differently. And that's kind of when I first started seeing the beer culture as something other than, beer pong and drinking games and things like that. But yeah, and so even before I started thinking about the economics of it, it was just like, I want to know how to do this. I enjoy beer, and I felt like it would just be a fun hobby to get into.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, home brewing just allows me to have some me time, some time with friends, and allows me to feel kind of good about something that I've created. And then I get to enjoy the fruits of my labor for many, many weeks to come.
Crazy about pumpkin. This is 10 to 12 inches.
Like the Brewing?
Yeah.
Love it. It's really good.
It's probably 12 inches.
I have it on tap now at Guadalajara.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Did you have that?
Oh,
Did you
nice.
had a sip of that? They have that storm to.
Yeah. Oh man.
Yeah.
They just like ordered 10 and then she like.
It's like $17 for a 6-pack. It's
Really?
It was something ridiculous like that.
They had a Deschutes
Do you guys know how many
on
pounds this
clearance.
is?
Did you get it?
How many what?
Pounds of grain?
This one?
Yeah, it's
Dan,
good.
do we know how much?
How many pounds of grain this is?
10?
Total.
No, that's, oh, no, it's more than that.
Do we have a scale?
Did you order this online?
No, we got it in Minneapolis.
But you got it as a kit?
No.
No.
We got it.
Well,
we
where'd
got
you
the
get the
recipe,
instructions?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
It's right here.
So then it had to have come with a kit then.
that was the recipe.
There's also this.
Well, there was kits where you just picked it up off
Here,
the
there.
shelf.
That's
Right,
the
those are-
recipe.
There it is.
That's the recipe.
Oh, nice. Yeah, okay. Sweet. 9 pounds. 10 pounds.
So we
That's
have
like 11 pounds.
yeah, and we have slightly more because they said
That's good.
that,
Yeah, you always want to
use
add
a little bit.
Yep. Especially in this method. I homebrew because I enjoy kind of that process, that creative process, coming up with my own recipe, and then following it through for sometimes months, and eventually getting able to enjoy the final product. It's kind of a labor of love, but it's fun. It's creative. It's a good outlet for that sort of thing. I've been trying more lately to make it into a social event. It started off with me totally just brewing kind of by myself.
Oh, hey, John and Mike. I was like, take a break. All right. How do we? Are we just dumping the whole thing in?
Not yet.
Not yet.
We gotta wait for a few more degrees, but soon.
Oh, okay.
Alright.
So what are we doing now?
So we're mashing. We're gonna extract the sugars from the grain. So we're slowly gonna add the grain to the water, which will knock off about 12 degrees of heat or so. And somebody should be stirring this too, if you don't mind. Just keep stirring as I'm adding. You can start to smell sweetness.
I seen you when your head's low, face down on the ground. I heard you say that you're lost and you couldn't be found. What did you tell me? What did you say? Just when your faith is gone, no, you want more day. I seen you when the sun shines. I seen you when your heart sings. I heard you say, when the world don't owe you a thing. Well, what did you tell me? What did you say? Just when your faith is gone, no, you want more days.
Ideally, we'd have this sit at 154. Now this is gonna sit for an hour, so we should start a timer.
Okay.
Let's start one. So I got it for
Smells like
I got it for
Malta
50
milk.
minutes. That'll give us 10 minutes to react.
Yeah.
Met a lot of people along the way that have been really helpful, which is another cool thing about homebrewing is like people are really excited to share ideas. John O'Reilly has definitely been really helpful to me. My cousin Ben was homebrewing before I was. He kind of got me into it.
When I first moved here, I moved from San Diego, and there's a lot of good beer in San Diego. And when I moved here, I was maybe a little bit sad when I went to my first bar here and realized they had both beers on tap, both Bud and Coors, and if I was lucky, maybe McGolden, which I really don't like. But you know, there weren't very many places here in Stearns County that had good diversity of beer. And then, you know, found a couple places like the White Horse in St. Cloud that did have some good beers on tap. And so I guess at first the beer drinking culture here seemed, this sounds so snobby, but unsophisticated, you know, just very, very basic. Like, people just didn't care. It was like, you know, well, I just like beer. I want beer flavored water is kind of what it came across as. And so, you know, yeah, I didn't order too much beer when I was out and about. But I found out that there was kind of a pretty vibrant homebrew culture here, and you know, there's actually quite a few professors and faculty and staff that are into doing homebrew, and so have brewed with a few folks along the way, and definitely picking up some tips and tricks. And so, and I think what we all kind of have in common with the homebrew culture is that, you know, we don't like wimpy beers.
So what we're doing now is we're raising the temperature up to about 170 for the mash out, which means you bring it up high to kill all the like starch and enzyme action, so that all the sugars kind of cut off, so you don't extract anything you don't want to.
Okay, cool.
So once it hits 170, pull the grain out and let it drip a little bit. You'll have your boil ready to go. Just get a little squeeze on the grain.
Yeah.
And so then just fire it up as high as it'll go and hopefully get it up to a boil. As soon as you see the very first bubble, you'll need to check your hops and what you put in there. So some of them will be probably 60 minutes, some will be like 30 minutes.
Okay.
30-minute ones, you just wait until there's 30 minutes left in the boil. You boil for an hour. And then you add the hops in at like 30 minutes or whatever. And then after the boil, you should probably get some ice and water and stuff going.
So here we have the carboy we're gonna ferment it in, so it'll be in here for about, 7 days, and add the yeast here soon, and then after 7 days put them in the bottles, and 2 or 3 weeks be ready to drink it.
Right.
4 weeks, 3 weeks. How many
It's
weeks?
like pretty much syrup at the bottom here.
3 weeks. 4 weeks. 4 weeks. We'll be ready to drink it.
So the light beer came into play after the repeal of Prohibition, and it was the fad and the norm for the rest of the time up until recently. That is what people knew here in the United States as beer. Okay, so which light beer do you want? They're all light beers. Which one do you want? Well, whatever you felt, you identified with. Well, in the 80s, then they started introducing these old world styles again. And even up until just a couple of years ago, if you were to go into certain pubs, taverns, and restaurants, these beers, even if locally made, would be on the import list because they didn't know how to categorize them.
My name is Doug DeGeest. I am the Vice President and General Manager of Third State Brewhouse, Cold Spring Brewing Company. I remember about 20 years ago there was a culture where beer went from mainstream beer to people started developing better taste for beers. And we did, at that time, here at Cold Spring Brewing Company, we did what we called microbrews at that time, where we made pale ales and brown ales and more flavorful beers for ourselves and a lot of other customers. That went away real quick when the big beer companies really downplayed the ability of the smaller brewers to make great beer, and the term microbrew actually went away. Then back probably about the early 2000s, the word craft beer came up and really replaced the name of microbrew. refer to that as the craft beer. People enjoy drinking it at home. People enjoy drinking with each other. You see the advent of larger packaging. You see 22-ounce bottles where you actually buy a beer and you share it with people. People have parties to get together to sample beers now. We have many more choices where it's not uncommon for people to come over to my house, everybody bring a different beer, and let's sit down and do a beer sampling. Pairing beer with food is part of the culture. It used to be you only paired wines with food. Now we're seeing beer dinners where you take a IPA and pair it with something spicy to contrast. You do give a lost trout brown ale and eat a chocolate dessert because you want to complement each other.
Just walk around like the Midi now has 12 taps and they used to have 4. You know what I mean? Like those sorts of changes. You go to Sal's, like the most like college bar ever, and there's a double IPA on tap or something like that. You know, some of the craft beer culture is starting to infiltrate. You have places like the White Horse and the Capitol Tavern in Sauk Rapids that are kind of leading the way on that. Capitol Tavern is 50 taps. You know, like it kind of starts there, and then breweries follow.
I think you just need like one good brewery in like one neighborhood, right? So like 3rd Street came on the scene in Stearns County, and people take pride in their home, right? So like you have a local brewery, and it's like that's me, right? That's my culture. These people are like my people, and they're making beer for me.
The misconception, or maybe it wasn't a misconception, it was that Cold Spring Brewing Company did really bad beer. And your fathers knew it and your grandfathers knew it, and there's a whole generations that associated this facility with less than good beer. And so we went to our owner and said, John, here's where we're at. Our beer is not good. And we have an old brewing system. It's tired, it's worn out. We cannot do good beer. Even to call it good beer would have been really a compliment to us. And we said, John, if you want to be in the beer business industry, craft beer is where it's at. We're the right size to be a craft brewery. If we're going to stay in the business and do it right, we need to build a new brew house. And John, our owner, is 85 years old, and he looked at us and said, what are you waiting for? Get it done.
Welcome to the Cold Spring Brewing Company. I'm Sam, and I'll be your tour guide today.
He basically authorized us to spend $12 to $14 million on a brand new brew house. And since that point, we got authorization, we built, we chose equipment, we brought on some expert brewing people that are all formally trained. Our team of brewers, as we call them, our dream team, we matched them up against any other brewery in the United States, and if we were one-on-one, we could go against them and beat them in many competitions. I think some marketing that has at times can be a little bit edgy. A great sales group that we convinced to come work for us to sell our product, and distributors. Really, all the pieces have come together and made us, I think, we're on the verge of being a legitimate player, and are really a legitimate player in Minnesota and beyond.
Actually, just last night, Forrester and I were talking about chicken ovulation. What? I was having eggs, and pretty much every time I eat eggs, they're like really screwed.
So, we've just been waiting for the bottles to sterilize and clean out in the dishwasher there. We're in the process of filling them up and capping them. We've got our first six.
Our first sixer.
First sixer of the Marmion Brown Ale. It's tasting good as it smells.
We as brewers tend to group together, and it's really us craft brewers against maybe the larger brewers. We're fighting for that market share. We want people to drink better beer. And so Summit EPA is a great beer. Shell's is a great brewery. They do a great job. Surly. It's really a great time to be a beer drinker in the state of Minnesota. A great time to be a beer drinker in Stearns County. We think we're accessible to a lot of people that want to drink great beer. And we'll always be here. We have an idea. There's a lot of new breweries coming up. There's new breweries being added every day. Liquor stores are not getting bigger. on-premise consumption. They're not adding tons of tap handles. So we think there's going to be this bubble that's going to explode. That there's so much going on, and some of the smaller, late-to-market people that maybe aren't doing great beer and aren't in it for, again, it's all about the beer. They're in it for the money. I think we'll lose them, and there will be a few great breweries that will be standing, and we plan on being one of those.
I get lost in my mind.